weeks ago, I finished 10th at the Berlin Half Marathon. How did I do that? I'm gonna try and break it down for you by recapping exactly how the race went, how I ran my fastest half marathon time ever in 72 minutes and 15 seconds. And I'll also talk about why it took me a little while to be kind of happy with my performance, and I'll break down why that is. Let's get into it. We're back in the mountains, baby. Let's just ignore that my hair looks like this for now. I have just woken up and, well, I got my first session at altitude today. It's just a little fartlek, getting the legs moving, getting used to being in the skinny air. It's all about effort, it's not about pace. So I'm excited. It looks like a beautiful day. Might even be cropped up weather because the sun's out. Oh, and I should have said, I've only been here since Wednesday at about midnight. So it might be Saturday, but I haven't had time to unpack, okay? So just ignore the mess. All right, stop having a go at me.
Unacceptable condition!
First session at altitude done. And you know what? It didn't suck. I was mostly on my own because Neve had a progression run. Amelia, another girl who warmed up with us, had a tempo session, and I had 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, times 2. I did some cheeky 30-second strides on the end as well because I just wanted to get my legs moving. And yeah, you know, the sun is shining. The first session usually feels like utter crap. And today probably felt bang average, which is a great success.
Great success.
So, that race I did a couple weeks ago. I was very, very nervous leading up to the Berlin Half Marathon, the whole week before, kind of unusually so for me. I do get nervous before races. I think it's important because it helps you run faster, because nerves are part of getting excited and it's your adrenaline and it gets you off the start line, and you know, once you've started, those nerves are gone. But I think I got in my own head a little bit, and I think that's because I felt a little bit scarred from my experience in Copenhagen when it didn't go to plan quite royally. Even though I did run a PB, I had just improved quite a lot since my previous half marathon before that. So I was due a PB, but I ran like an absolute idiot. And it was very, very painful for the whole second half because I just went out too fast and I didn't want to make the same mistake, and I just wanted to be smart this time around. But I think I was, scared, I think it's fair to say, before Berlin. And the mental side of running is so important. When you feel like that before a race, or any type of way that puts you in a funk or out of your usual flow, to acknowledge and accept that those feelings are there, and then put a plan in place to cope with those feelings and talk about maybe why you feel like that, which I did with my coach. But before I talk about that and my mental approach for this race in general, and then how that sort of changed, I suppose, throughout the race and after the race, I want to talk to you about something that has got my mental health in general into such a good place, and that is therapy. This video is a paid partnership with BetterHelp, and I'd love to talk to you for just a moment about their service and about what working with a therapist can do for you. My mental health has been a little bit turbulent at times, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of us. Life throws things at you that are either unexpected or complicated or difficult to deal with, and we often suffer as a result because it's hard to process that. And it's also hard to carry on with your day-to-day stuff that doesn't just go away when you're struggling with something. And for me, acknowledging that I was struggling in the past was huge. Talking to those close to me also really, really helped. And one of the other things that was a huge help was working with a therapist. And so often, just starting that process can be such a big step forward in starting to feel better, or even just a little bit more in control of things. Am I saying it's in any way easy? Absolutely not. Starting therapy can be really, really hard. And a lot of people I know who have found themselves in that position have found it really hard to find the right therapist for them in that moment. Or they feel uncomfortable at the idea of face-to-face therapy because it can be daunting talking to a total stranger in the same room as you about stuff that's super personal. And with BetterHelp, you can have therapy as a phone call or as a video chat or even just via messaging if that's what you prefer to start off with. The most important thing is that it's the right version of therapy for you and for whatever you're dealing with at that time. I've shared a link in my description, and essentially to get started, all you need to do is fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs. And then you'll get matched to a credentialized therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. And one of the things that's so great about BetterHelp is that you can schedule therapy sessions for whenever is convenient for you. And if you don't really fit with the first therapist that you're matched with, which is super common with therapy, you can easily switch to another therapist at no additional cost. Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. So if you think you'd benefit from therapy too, consider BetterHelp. Click the link at the top of the description or go to betterhelp.com/philybowden, and clicking this link both helps support this channel but also gets you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. So I was effectively shitting my pants a few days before the race. That's not ideal. Okay, not literally, but I was really nervous. I spoke to my coach about this, and I spoke about why I felt that was the case because of the kind of scarring experience, if you like, of Copenhagen Half Marathon last year. And we spoke about all of the facts. And I find that so helpful in grounding you in the present rather than taking you back to this memory from the past that is not going to duplicate itself into the future, even though that's what your brain is telling you. It's telling you, I'm scared, this is gonna happen again. And the facts were, I'm a completely different athlete to who I was in September last year. I'm fitter because we have lab results from before that race, and I was not in shape. Okay? And I just ran a 10K PB this spring, so we know I'm in shape. I've clearly learned from the experience of going out too hard and not running the race the right way in Copenhagen, because I'm reflecting on that and telling myself not to do it again. And those little facts, really helpful, because you can repeat those to yourself whenever you go to this place of, oh my God, what's gonna happen? It could be really bad. But also, well, if it doesn't go perfectly, there'll be something to learn from that. Guess that's not so bad after all. That really helped to settle me and to kind of get me more into my race mode, race week, game mode of excitement with a little bit of nerves sprinkled in there, a healthy amount. And then we got on to the goals for the race. And this was a bit of a sticking point for me that I struggled with, because we are so time oriented, okay, as runners in general. I'm projecting, but a lot of the runners that I work with are like this too. And we fixate on running a PB or running this nice, neat time or dipping just a second under so it's something and 59 seconds. So you can say I ran 70 minutes or 71 in my case, or, you know, those kind of things. And sometimes that can be really problematic, especially in my position, because I'm at the elite end of the sport, okay? I'm shooting for the Olympics in 2028. I want to be in these championship races where I'm representing Great Britain. I've got that kit on. You need to race in those races, okay? It's not about time trialing and running a PB. If I went to the Olympics and came last with a PB, I would be more disappointed than if I was able to medal or get into the top 10 running my slowest time ever, okay? It's not about times in these championship races, and that's a skill that I need to hone to be able to be good in my sport. Times can be taken off you, PBs can be broken, records can be broken, but positions and medals in races, that stays forever. So my coach was trying to drill that into my head and get me to move away from, well, I want to run 70 minutes or 71 or, you know, these arbitrary times, and get it into my head that I needed to race and go into my body, into how I feel and feeling out racing, because you can't rely on your watch. It's about who's around you. You've got to race the people around you. And it's riskier, it's harder, because it's sometimes difficult to not get drawn into someone else's race strategy. And if someone throws a really fast mile split at you, it's going to be tough to rally with, but that's part of your racing craft, and kind of experiencing that and learning from it is super, super important. So goals, therefore, looked a little bit different from my nice little neat and tidy ABC 70 minutes, 71 minutes, 72 minutes, kind of what I had in my head as like ABC goals. That was all out of the window. We agreed that on a good day, we were quite confident I could sustain 5:25 pace, which is 71 minutes. So that's a good number to have in your head if you are checking in with the watch, which should be less of a priority. But the goal was to have a really tough race and fight for every position possible. Fight those people around me, not literally, but in the race, you know, and be aiming to beat the people around me. Find the group to work with and then race them. I found it so hard to accept that that was the goal because it's so unknown. You don't know what the people around you are going to do, but I did accept it. And on that front, I'd say the race was a success. But when I crossed the line, I was still not happy, even though I had secured that goal. I wonder why. Could it be because I hadn't let go of having a time in my head? Ooh, you might be onto something. Yeah, a little more on that later when I get to the part where I actually finish the race. Let's look at some data, shall we? And I will take you through the race kind of mile by mile, split by split, and also what I can remember from the race. You do tend to block a lot out sometimes when it's painful. There's this like, maybe it's a sort of just on the spectrum of like a PTSD effect that like you're in so much pain you just can't remember what was going on. But I'm going to try my best. Me and my moose are going to go through the splits. So I should mention as well, it was about 20 degrees when we started warming up. So cut the warm up down to just 1.5 miles because it's easier to get warm when it's warm outside. Funny that, no need for a 2 to 3 mile warm up. We're conserving energy and we're trying to not raise our core body temperature too much before the race. So I did a sort of minimal warm up, a little bit longer than my marathon warm up, which is like 8 to 10 minutes. Was pretty toasty before starting the race. I can remember chucking water on myself to try and sort of keep cool before starting because I knew it was going to be a challenge to stay cool throughout the race anyway, which is not what you want for a half marathon, but we're all in the same boat. You can't control the weather, so we move. I'm going to go through the mile splits and talk about how it went, and Mr. Moosey over here is going to be in charge of conversions into Ks, okay? I trust you, Mr. Metric. Let's do it. First mile then, 5:23, which is, thank you, sir. Pretty happy with that. Last year at the Copenhagen Marathon, I opened up with a 5:17 first mile. So 6 seconds slower, much more controlled, focusing on myself for the first few miles. That was the plan before I got into the racing mode, to kind of find a good rhythm and lock in with it so that then I could race the people around me. And the first few miles were all pretty uneventful, pretty happy with how it was going. So 5:23, 5:27, 5:28, 5:32, 5:19 for mile 5. So part of this will be GPS kind of getting bumped around in the buildings, and I wasn't paying too much attention to it. And the good thing was that I was locked into a rhythm. Okay, yes, that rhythm looks a little bit patchy because those splits are varying, but it's varying because the people around me are probably going a little faster at times, slowing down, and I was, you know, locking into the group around me, and that's what it's about. If someone throws a 5:15 at you at 5 miles in, you try and match it. And if you can come off and lock back into 5:20s afterwards, great. That's where your racing craft is going to be honed. Is that slightly out of my comfort zone from locking in to just an average pace and trying to stay there or gradually pick it up? Yeah, but it felt like the right thing to do. And I was doing what I was meant to do in terms of the race plan, so that felt good. I took a gel between 4 and 5 miles. I had 2 on me, and the plan was to take one at 4 to 5 miles and take another around 8 to 9 if I was still feeling in control and good enough to take a whole gel on at half marathon pace. Easier said than done. And taking a gel in a race that takes 1 hour and 10 minutes, give or take, isn't essential, but especially in the heat with the electrolytes in the gel, it's definitely going to help. And it really did make me feel better. And it was a nice thing to sort of distract me as well, to kind of get that first 5 miles out the way, secure the gel, and then just have 8 to go. I've left Mr. Moosey over there, but he's promised me that he is still in control of adding the paces per kilometre on the screen. So let's hope he holds his end of the deal, or we will be having words. I can remember starting to really enjoy myself from about 5 miles in, because I was well into the meaty part of the race, but I was gaining confidence because I was feeling comfortable, relatively speaking. Comfortable in feeling uncomfortable. I felt like I'd really locked in and I was switched on, and already I had this voice in my head that was telling me those people that are in front of you that you're not running with, those are the people you need to be running with. So I was always aiming to be with the next group and not making sort of big surges, but sort of picking people off. Probably some people that had gone off too fast and that were slowing, but kind of making sure that I was moving through rather than, you know, other people coming around me. And I'd say that feeling of sort of really jamming, really vibing with the race, really enjoying myself, feeling quite confident, lasted from about 5 miles until probably somewhere between 9 and 10. So the splits from that part of the race are mile 6 was 5:29, and then I went 5:25, 5:26, 5:31, 5:22 for mile 10. All quite in line with what I'd run so far in the race, and probably averaging around 5:25, 5:26, that kind of low 71-minute mark, which is really what I wanted to run in my head. And then we have the last 3 miles. Half marathons are so hard. And with this part of the race, I'm gonna have to take myself back to some real deep, dark moments of pain, my legs really, really hurting, my brain telling me to stop, and that I'm an idiot for enjoying this sort of thing. It really started to become a grind. But you know what? You know what we say around here? We love the grind. And not only was telling myself that in my head helpful, but I heard at least 10 people who cheered me on in the race shout "love the grind" at me. And when I heard that in these last 3 miles, if any of you watching this are people that shouted that at me, you are responsible for at least 1% of this performance, okay? Cumulatively, like 1% each, I'm saying, okay? Because it's like an immediate boost. I'm like, yes, I love the grind. These people are here cheering me on and reminding me that I love doing this, and that you have to embrace the suck and enjoy the hard part, because what is standing in your way that you are avoiding, that is painful and that is hard, is what is in front of that thing you want to get to. So you just have to lean into it and create that pain cave. Boy, oh boy, was I in a pain cave. And speaking of pain cave, before I can get onto that last 3 miles and talk to you about why I was really unhappy once I saw the Brandenburg Gate, even though I was actually really happy with the rest of the race before that moment, I've got to go and run again. And I did a session this morning, and doubles in the evening after a session is never fun, and it is painful, but it saves your legs the next day, because I always feel better after a double. So let's go run. All right. Wait a sec, I need a drink. Damn, she was thirsty. Well, that was a lovely run. The doubles are hard here when you run from the house or wherever you're staying. If you're in Font-Romeu and you don't drive somewhere, it's unbelievably hilly, but the good views do make up for it. So I guess that's when it would be appropriate to say swings and roundabouts. Anywho, back to the last 3 miles of that race I did. Yeah, do you know what? Let's just get the data out of the way. The splits, the concrete kind of, I'd say, most boring part, because the splits only tell one side of the story. So let's get that part out of the way. Oh, machine of information. Tell me what I need to tell the people. Oh, I should note, Mr. Moosey, still holding up your end of the bargain? Okay, good. We're telepathic, so he doesn't need to. He will convert into minutes per kilometer for you. And I'd covered the first 10 miles because this was all pretty standard, all within the kind of right pace ranges. So mile number 10, we ran 5:22. Mile number 11, 5:33. Mile 12, 5:35. Mile 13, 5:37. And then around the last 0.2 of a mile at 5:33 pace. So it didn't completely explode. I managed to pick it up for that last tiny, weeny tiny bit, but only barely, because that wasn't even the pace that I'd been running for most of the race. Just picked it up to the same speed that I ran mile 11 at. But let's run it back to my traumatizing experience at the Copenhagen Half Marathon. In comparison, my last 3 miles at Copenhagen were 5:37, 5:45, 5:36. And to add to that, I was running 5:33, 5:34, 5:37 for the 3 miles previous to that, in a race where I started out at 5:18 pace. Yikes. I didn't run any 5:18 miles in this race, and I managed to run 15 at 9, 24 seconds quicker than last time. Now, again, the splits it wasn't what this race was about, but in my head I was like, on a good day, 5:25 average, that would have been 71. I still thought I was gonna run 71 something in those last 3 miles, so I didn't feel too upset about the splits I was seeing on my watch. However, when you start running 10 seconds slower than that average pace, 3 miles, that equals half a minute. So that's where my extra 30 seconds came from, if you like, at around 71:45. Whoa, quick maths.
Quick maths.
If I'd have sustained 5:25 for those last 3 miles with the kind of give and take. What I think is more important is to talk about how I was feeling and how I got through those last 3 miles and where my head was at. And I should say, at this point, the support from the people of Berlin and the people that were lining the course was unreal. It was almost impossible to have a bad time, even if you were having a bad time or in a lot of pain, which I'm sure most people were in those last 3 miles. I certainly was. But you know what I'm really proud of? The way I battled and rallied with that pain. I didn't kind of hear that voice of like, this really hurts, we need to slow down, this is too much, you can't do this. I just heard from my body that it was hurting and it was hard. And I said, in my head, I said back to that voice, great, good. That's literally what we wanted today. We wanted to run a tough race and I showed up. I showed up in the face of that pain, and I think that's something to be really proud of. And I was really proud of it whilst I was running. Again, I was proud of how I was running this race and how I'd gone past people, how I was moving through. There were people that were, I guess, hitting the wall more than I was or finding it harder than I was in those last 3 miles, because I was still going past people even though I'd slowed down, which is a great feeling. It's a great way to run the race. It makes you feel very positive, but it was still very painful. And you've just got to kind of chunk it down in those last few miles, break it down to the next half a mile, the next mile, and know that it's going to be over. I probably looked at my watch a little bit too much because I wanted to know exactly when it would be over. So I'd check and know that it was 2 miles to go. I'd then want to know when it was 3K to go or 2K to go, and like working out basically how many minutes I had left to be in pain. Not really a useful use of your energy. You kind of just have to focus on the task in hand. And the thing that really upset me, which I spoke about in the race video, which if you haven't watched it, what are you doing with your life? Go and watch the race video right now. Why are you watching this video? You should be watching the race video.
Do it!
Please, go and watch it and come back. And I picked up on this quite quickly after I'd finished. I didn't let it fester for too long. But when I saw the clock click over to 72 minutes as I'd come under the Brandenburg Gate, I was immediately like, oh, well, great, that's rubbish then. Like the pride and the sort of satisfaction with how hard I'd worked and how well I'd executed the race and the plan for the whole time I was running, apart from that last like 200 meters, out the window because I'd seen the clock tick over to 72:00 when I had 100 meters left to run. What's all that about? That's ridiculous. And I pulled myself up on it probably about 5 or 10 minutes after the race, and I was annoyed that I was annoyed about that. And I've since had time to reflect on that. It's just that ingrained, I need to run this specific time to be successful thing that's in my head, which probably, arises from needing to reach qualifying times, to try and compete in certain competitions and to represent your country, to move up in the rankings, but also the weight that we place on such an arbitrary number. I'm sure people watching have done this too. The sub 3 hour marathon, the sub 4 hour marathon. We place so much weight on these round, pretty perfect numbers so that we can say that we've run under that. And we rank ourselves amongst the people around us because it's human nature, we're competitive, but don't let that consume you. Don't let that be the be all and end all. And I would love to finish this video with that message. Don't let one aspect of the race, the finish time, cloud your happiness, satisfaction, pride, reflection, or learning on the tons of other things that were important that day. How well you prepared, how well you dealt with the weather conditions on the day, how you executed the race plan, hopefully, that existed, that wasn't just rooted in a finish time. The strategy of starting out conservative or racing the people around you or finishing strong or taking on your fueling or, just being open to reflecting on a race and learning from it rather than seeing it as black and white success and failure, because there is so much more in the middle. And sometimes you learn a lot more from just missing the bar or just missing your goal and falling a little bit short than you do when it's that one rare, perfect day that everything goes right and then you don't reflect on things that still could have gone better. And that will serve you well for many, many races to come. That's what I'm gonna try and do. It's a continuous work in progress. I hope you all will be kind to yourselves as well and set some race goals that aren't just finishing in X time, because it's boring and it's mean to yourself and it's limiting you from learning a lot more and improving a lot more in other ways. And also, love the grind.